Alright guys, what's up? I am back. There is a new festival, which is always exciting. I love these festivals. Honestly, in a lot of ways, it's better than playing the regular game because you get to play all new decks. There's a ban list. A bunch of the really good decks are hit, so you can have some good, wholesome fun depending on the festival. But this one's pretty cool. It's a Theme Chronicle. The idea here is to play all of the decks that are in the solo mode. Now, you can cheat around this. I'm going to show you later how, but yeah, basically it's a bunch of decks from the solo mode. Although, of course, let's check out the loaners. They give you some pretty decent donors. They've got Rikka, which is a really good deck, Lightsworn, which is also a really good deck, and Mechanites, which is a going second deck that's also pretty good. All of the loaners are kind of good this time around. Like always, recently they've really fixed the loaners. They've sucked for a really long time, but they're kind of decent. Before we get started, though, would you like to make your Master Duel experience a whole lot better?
Are you ready to take your Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel Play experience to a new level? The Untapped GG Companion is here for you. Use the deck tracker to know exactly what cards you have in your deck, and to go over any cards you aren't familiar with yet by hovering over them. It instantly updates when you draw a card, and automatically hides if you check your extra deck or graveyard. This is the perfect tool to help you master a new deck. The Untapped GG Companion also lets you import decks directly into the game in seconds. Copy any YDK or YDKE deck string, create a new deck in-game, click the Start Auto Import button, and let us take the wheel. Once the duel is over, check your win rate on your personal stats page. Brag among your friends and share your decks so they can import them into the game too. Start your path to master today by downloading the Untapped GG Companion at ygom.untapped.gg.
Okay, I have a few decks to show you guys today. The first one is Suships. I don't know how, I don't know why, but there are certain decks that, I swear to you, slip through the cracks every single time. This deck is not from the solo mode, but Konami is perfectly okay with you playing it. There's a few decks, Cosmos, Ancient Warriors, Suships. Those are just 3 decks off the top of my head that always slip through every single time. Blue Eyes, Dark Magician are both perfectly, completely legal in this festival. You can play either one of them, honestly. Blue Eyes, Dark Magician, you're missing some of the boss monsters like a Dragoon and stuff, but for the most part, those decks are fully legal. This deck is really cheap. Like, if you have not crafted this deck, craft it. It's staples, and then the main deck is all really cheap cards, and then a bunch of generic rank 4s. This deck is outrageously cheap. It's actually a pretty strong deck, considering it's useful for every single festival ever. There's never been one festival that I've made one of these videos for, except for maybe like the No Extra Deck festival. Other than that, and you could probably still just summon the 2000 attack monster, but regardless, like every single festival has made this deck pretty much playable, which is kind of crazy. Unless they take off your extra deck, or that it's like link only or something like that, this deck will be playable. Next up is Plants. I'm shocked that this deck is pretty much at full power. Like, I know that Rikkas are in the solo mode, and that makes sense, and so are the Ragnarok. Well, Ragnarok is not in the solo mode, but it kind of works with a lot of plant decks, so they kind of have kept it. But this is kind of a more Rikka-centered plant pile deck. It's more Rikkas than it usually is. Most of the time, it's more so Sun Avalon focus, stuff like that. It's more focused on Sun Avalon and aromatherapies and stuff like that. But this one has like a little engine from everybody. But this is a very strong deck. This is pretty much it looks a lot like the version of this deck that would be playable in the regular ladder and rank. Like, this is a very good deck. Now, I will say this deck does require quite a bit of skill, so perhaps you might be better off just using the loaner deck that they have given to you that is a little more Rikka focused. This is more like Plant Link focused. Again, this is kind of a high skill deck. You're gonna run into the timer constantly, so that can be a little bit of an issue. If you don't want to deal with running into the timer, I would suggest just sticking to the pure Rikka loaner deck. But if you are willing to like expand your mind and learn some new combos in a new combo deck, this is probably a pretty good one for you. And next up is Lightsworn. This particular one is mixed with Skull Servants. Skull Servants is actually quite a good deck, especially in a slow down format like this. Max C's banned, so you can special summon 75 times in a turn. It really doesn't impact you negatively. The Lightsworns help you mill pretty easily, and then actually so do the White Lord. This guy's very good. When he gets milled, he mills a ton. This deck in general is just very good at milling, and then obviously you get a bunch of benefits from milling. Felice summons itself, Wolf summons itself, Dragon Link, you have Whis. Like, the deck is very strong. Soul Charge, Charger Light Brigade, everything's basically unlocked in Lightsworns, which is cool, so you can essentially just mill as much as you want with Lightsworns, and then also benefit from the fact that you've got this gigantic King of the Skull Servants, and you can go for OTKs or if you're going first, you can end on a half decent board because you've got like a pretty decent extra deck. You could sprinkle in the Lightsworn monsters, like the dragons, for example. You could sprinkle those in if you wanted to, but I prefer to like go towards the Mechanic Crusadio route because it doesn't force you to play bricks, and you can still kind of OTK and put pressure on your opponent. But yeah, Lightsworns mixed with Skull Servants, usually a pretty good deck, but even better in a slowed down format. All right, next up is Eldlich. This might actually be the best deck. It depends on how you build it. This one has a little bit of a Zombie World engine. I like the Zombie World engine because it essentially is just, I guess it's like 6 cards if you really look at it, because it's the Unizombie, Necro World Banshee, and Doomking Balrog. You can send all this or special summon. As long as you have Eldlich, you can special summon any zombie monster, so you can get to this pretty easily. And then, of course, you've got Zombie World, which you can play as many copies as you want. That card's just really good. Zombie World is actually additionally, I think, beneficial in this particular festival because a lot of decks rely on like being insects or being plants. And if you put Zombie World on the field, it turns everything into a zombie. So it can actually slow down your opponent's plays. So if you're playing against like Beetroopers and you have Zombie World on the field, they don't have any. If you activate this, all of their insects turn into zombies. So now when they try to link summon, like the Link 2, for example, they can't. And they might not be playing generic stuff because things like IP are banned. Not IP, SP, for example, is banned. So they might not be playing all of the generic stuff needed. So this might actually be really, really good if you could just set that up without even having to play Eldlich. You could just play regular Zombie World. A lot of the Zombie World cards are, again, fully unlocked in this. The only like drawback is that Solemn Judgment is banned, but Solemn Judgment being banned is not the end of the world because you have this card, Apophis of the Swamp Deity. This card is basically Solemn Judgment as long as you control any other continuous trap. All of their monsters are continuous traps, so you can just like activate this Chain Link 1, activate this Chain Link 2, summon this guy, banish, destroy a card. If you control Eldlich, destroy a card, and then Chain Link 1, Apophis, and then you can negate cards equal to the amount of continuous traps. So this card is pretty much it's basically Solemn Judgment, plus you have, plus it summons itself as a monster, which is pretty good. And it's 2,000 attacks, so it's not like little weakling. And then the extra deck really actually doesn't matter. You rarely go into the extra deck. The only cards you actually use are like Vampire Sucker and Avenged Savior and stuff like that. But for the most part, this deck is pretty good. It's good, and you can make it a more like on the trap monster side if you wanted to. You could play like the Silhouette White Rabbit. You could also make it more on the zombie side by including even more Unizombies and Necroworld Banshees and stuff like that. So you can play around with the ratios of this deck and kind of go either direction. Okay, the last deck I'm going to show you is an insect deck. This is Ragnarika with the Beetroopers. You can also play Beetroopers with Battle Wasp. Beetrooper with Battle Wasp is also pretty good, but this deck is extremely consistent. It is actually a pretty good combo deck. I'd say it's probably like a tier 3 combo deck in a regular ladder, but again, like all of the tier 1 decks are hit on this list, so you can't play the tier 1 decks. So all of a sudden the tier 3 decks and the high tier rogue decks become the tier 1 decks. And in this case, this deck actually puts up really, really strong boards. There are a lot of generic cards that are banned, so you're not able to go into like an Appaloosa like you normally would, but regardless of that, you can still set up really, really incredible boards. You have the Crawler Soma, which is in itself full combo. It puts like 7 insects on board if you do it fully. You just the Beetrooper Armored Horn. This is the one I was talking about, the one that requires 2 insect monsters. If you use Zombie World against this, you kind of destroy this deck. But again, if this deck goes first, it's also very, very strong because it can actually put up some decent interruption boards overall. And just the insect engine has a lot of recursion. It's actually kind of scary how much recursion this deck actually has. But this is yet another deck that is very, very good. This is the last deck that I'm going to be showing you today. If you have any suggestions, anything that I forgot, because again, decks always slip through the cracks, you guys can post it down below and you can definitely help each other because there are tons of decks that always slip through these cracks. Things that Konami never intended for people to play, but you look hard enough, things like Ancient Warriors, Cosmos, Suships, Blue Eyes, decks that slip totally through. Oh, Ascend. Ascend is a deck. It's a brand new deck. Completely slipped through the cracks. You can play Ascend at full power in this event. I have no idea why, but you can play it at full power. But there are always decks that slip through the cracks. Let me know what you guys are playing. La, 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 la.